Midsommer 2019. Let this one roll. Desolate sort of winter picture which starts the movie. The camera panning round, and then a phone call from a daughter to her parents expressing concern about her sister's state of mind. It's heard on an answer phone. The sister's winding herself up, generating a sort of panic over her sister's email which said goodbye, and the boyfriend that was about to separate from, and she seeks reassurance, doesn't get a lot, and then she's on to her friends. She's in a state basically worried about the situation with her family. Bipolar sister managed to connect the exhaust to the inside of the house and closed all the doors, and she and her parents are both suffocated to death. As the bodies are brought out in the black bags, the music is like schizoid King Crimson style. The boyfriend comes over to console the sister, and we have this scene where she's moaning with grief. It's pretty gross. Christian and Danny go to a sort of party, Christian's friends, and what crops up is a visit to Sweden that the gang have arranged, and this later is a cause of concern for Danny, who was caught by surprise and is still feeling extremely shaky after her family have all perished, and the boyfriend had previously been thinking of splitting up, so he's probably feeling a little bit trapped. A festival, commune festival, is where they'll be heading, with lots of dressing up. The review suggests that it's much more than that, almost pagan-like, with lots of sex and drugs and music. We get an insight into how Danny is still struggling to come to terms with the enormity of what's happened, and the Swedish boy expresses his condolences, which flips her a bit, and she's got to go to the bathroom, and we then see her on board the plane doing the same and having a cry. I switch now to the minivan. Early conversation between the boys is on sex and violence. Danny seems very weary of the travel, a 4-hour trip. I get a sort of a feeling that the five of them, Danny and the 4 guys, but the guys have got some sort of some darkness hidden away in their closets somewhere. Something that's left some sort of at ease, some disturbing aspects to what they're into. The black guy's apparently doing a thesis. He's got a book on National Socialism. The director, in his attempts to create this sort of sinister feeling, has photographed some of the action upside down, so the roads actually become the sky and the sky the road. They meet the Swedes, the family and others, and 2 English people, and immediately they're into taking LSD or something. Mark, the black guy, starts getting a bit paranoid.
Guys, do it feels so nice. Josh, can you lay down, please? Do you feel that? The energy coming up from the earth? Look, the trees too, they're breathing.
The director now starts to get into his own with imagery connected with a hallucinogenic experience is now part of the direction. The exaggerated wind, the visual images of the trees, and then move on after that first bout of drug taking and meet the rest of the community. They all seem to be dressed in white. A lot of blondes, of course, but it's Sweden, isn't it? So we're now in Pally's community, and a mix of sexes and ages are all in a circle, with hands together, legs crossed for the one sitting on the floor. They're all daubed in white, and it seems like some sort of ritual community clan type of thing. And Danny and Christian, of course, are looking on with Christian's 2 friends. After this collective chant, which is like summoning the gods, it ceases and they settle into eat, and the Americans inquire with Pele if there's a translation of these sounds that were uttered. It's Danny's birthday. Christian's forgot, but Pele's not. He's drawn her, and he gives her the drawing. He's hitting on her, of course. They walk and explore the grounds, and there's looks like a grizzly bear in a wooden cage, which appears to be ignored. The dinner tables are in the shape of a cross, and there's obviously 2 sort of chiefs, kings, queens, call them what you will, who signal the beginning of the feast, but it's reminiscent of a coven, a witch's coven. After a ritual drink by the 2 elders, are carried off in their respective honourable chairs. This is clearly some sort of, I don't know, pagan ritual or ceremony from back when, that's being carried out right next to the sea, next to a rock of a particular shape. Things read from a book. Handprints with the skin cut by a knife imprint on the wall, on this sort of wall with various strange shapes and forms. Rock takes on, I guess, some mythical power form, like a godlike figure. The woman's head just slightly above the rock. It's almost suggesting that she's going to give herself up as some form of sacrifice to the heaven. And for sure, she dives off and crashes into the ground below. Definitely not survived that. And then the elderly man, he sacrifices himself like the woman and jumps off. The Americans are completely stunned by this, screaming for him not to jump. It's quite a sort of grueling watch. The fall by the man fails to kill him, so a man walks out with a rather long sort of hammer that looks like something you might use if you're playing croquet, and crushes his skull with it. Two other younger grab hold of the croquet stick and smash it onto the man, and then the Americans run off, and they're accosted by a woman who tries to justify it on the basis that the two that had jumped had reached the end of the circle of life, which had been explained earlier as 4 seasons in 18-year cycles, meaning that once you reach 72, then that's time to jump off the cliff. As they leave the area where the sacrifices took place, Danny then it's conjured up all those images of her family being gassed, and she runs to a more serene place and bursts into tears. A subplot, as these boys are at university, one of them is doing a thesis on this group, and Christian then announces to him that he's going to do his thesis, an observation on the cult, so to speak. And this really upsets the other guy, because he thought his permission had been granted for him to do it, and he, having sole sort of rights over it. But the Swede, his friend, let slip that he got the elders, so to speak, to agree to a second by Christian. So this is the subplot. The Swedish boy Pell, we then find him trying to console Danny, who clearly wants to leave, and he uses the association of lost parenthood to try and empathise with her, but there seems to be sexual overtones in his sort of attempt to get Danny to shift her sort of warmth from Christian to him. We see the cremation with the bodies on like a grill, like they're being barbecued. Another ceremony later that evening after the cremation begins, and it turns into yet another sacrificial offering, but this time a young boy, probably in his early teens, steps forward. Before 2 men weighed down with a boulder throw the boy into the pond, others step forward and shout their opposition, and it's stopped. Danny wants to leave, Christian doesn't, and then this leads to a long drawn out argument about their motivation within the relationship, about their ulterior motives, about their sliders, anything that could be misunderstood or Typical quarrel between young, immature minds. We then appear to have a sort of dream sequence, Danny's dream, where she sees a car drive up without her, where she reenacts the pummeling of the old man's head by the hammer. The following morning, the ashes of the two elders who were burnt like a cinder on a barbecue stick are removed. Odd events continue. A pebble put under one of the boys' beds from a young 15-year-old. Apparently it indicates that she's come of age and wants to lose her virginity. Then one of the Americans has a piss against a dead tree, which causes a consternation because it's symbolically viewed as like a gravestone. And then the English girl who's wanting to leave finds that her English boyfriend has left without her and can't understand why. All these sinister things which are clearly going to be designed to keep them there because they don't want them to tell the world what's going on at this community. People start to disappear, the English couple, one by one, and then the black guy is attacked in a chapel of sorts, a blow that I think killed him. Mark disappears with a young girl, and Joss gets the blow to the head, and neither appear at the next meal sitting. Another drink concoction, probably full of hallucinogenic content, is made and given to all. Within minutes, the hallucinogen starts taking place, and the girl, what's her name, Dina, starts to experience, Danny starts to experience the trip, a dance, a contest. The last one standing wins the prize. This is what's on offer. The dance is only for women. And then we then cut to Christian in some small room. The woman informs Christian that the young girl Maya is an astrological match with him and therefore ideal for mating, which Christian is rather taken aback by. The number of girls dancing is dwindling and Danny's still involved. It's a setup, of course. And then Maya approaches Christian with a special cocktail, which one would assume is some sort of aphrodisiac. The director at this point does some trickery to recreate a perceived trip whilst Danny is dancing. So Danny becomes May Queen, and then when they sit for the next meal, all those present await her to begin. Christian's at the table, but he's floating down a rabbit hole of a bad trip, it would appear. Maya has also taken the aphrodisiac gets up and lures Christian to follow her, so we know what's going to happen next. There's a leafy coach ready for the Queen to go on her way to toast for good crops, but she must do it alone. Christian is left, but of course he's got other fish to fry. The stage is set. Christian is given some potion to sniff into, and then a door's open and we see at least a dozen naked women next to a fire. This is clearly where he's going to fuck this girl. Maya's lying on the floor surrounded by some leaves, flowers, like a wreath, and behind her are these other women, all naked, and they start to hum. It's clearly a sort of initiation ceremony for Maya into the world of sexual pleasure. After Danny's ceremony is complete, her inquisitiveness is too much, and then she manages to, through a keyhole, see what the Christian's up to, and then starts to cry. The girls surround her, and we then get a group empathy cry, with some assistance from some of the other women pushing his backside quicker. Christian then finally comes, and Maya immediately starts saying she can feel the baby. Christian leaves the building in panic, rushing around, trying to find some place of refuge, and he comes across a foot poking out of the earth. Suggests it's probably Josh's. He runs into another wooden building and he finds the sacrificial body of the English girl stretched out, and then another person in there woofs some dust in his face. Flip forward to another day, and another day of sacrifice. 9 to be cast out today, and 1 to be chosen by Danny. Danny, apart from her face, is completely covered in a multitude of coloured flowers, and now she has the ordeal of choosing between Christian, who's immobilised in a chair, and one of the other Swedes to be the last of the 9th sacrificed on this occasion. Those to perish are delivered in wheelbarrows, reflective of their return to earthly matters. The first 2 appear to be handicapped persons, not sure whether they're adults or children. We then witness the intestines of a grizzly bear being cut clear. Christian is put inside the skin of the bear and appears to be next up in the queue. And the others are anaesthetised, and Christian is not. He's awake as the torches light the grain inside the bales of grain inside the building. It's now going to turn into an inferno. The tent, it's a KKK style tent, erupts in flames, and one within starts to shriek in fear, and those outside copy to experience what it feels like to be burnt alive. Danny, having chosen Christian, feeling rejected as the tent finally collapses into cinders. She has a wry smile on her face.